Hello and welcome to tonight's broadcast of Running on Love with God. My name's Lori Michelle, and I was awakened to the voice of our Creator in April of 2009. And He said, go get pen and paper and start writing this down. And I listened, and now I'm recording these programs every week, and I'm in Israel, and my friend Anna Marie is in Chicago. Hello. And Anna Marie helps me go deeper into timely topics that need more light. We need light in this world. We're being drowned in darkness right now. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's what I see. I see us at each other's throats, and there's a lot of fighting everywhere, especially in America right now. And tonight's program is called Do Morality and Justice Exist Without God? The short answer is no, of course not. There are a lot of people who don't believe in God, atheists. There are people who sit on the fence and they're agnostic. And there are a lot of people who believe that they're quite moral and they don't need God or anyone to tell them right from wrong. And that's simply untrue. The court system that exists in the United States of America originated from God himself. Thousands of years ago, God gave Moshe his Torah, and in his instruction manual for life itself, he instructed that there should be a court system, laws, and man needed laws to follow, and there needed to be a judicial system. So what we are living in a civilized world, came from God originally. And that leads us to the question is, as to why there's so much chaos if we have a court system. Before I go deeper into that, I'm going to allow you to ask those questions, Anna Marie. But the short answer to the topic tonight, do morality and justice exist without God, is simply no.
Okay, I want to ask a question about more primitive societies or isolated societies with outside the Judeo-Christian background. They all had gods that they believed in, although they did not believe in the one God. And they had systems of justice and morality, things that were considered right and wrong behavior. So because they had a system of gods, does that count? Or
Wow. This is, you're hitting me from left field. This shows that we don't plan this. I had no idea that you were going to ask this, and his answer is no. I I don't know how I would answer that, but I would answer the way Hashem often answers my questions with another question is, how did it work for them?
okay, yeah. In the end, they, I think, got conquered and assimilated and absorbed. But you kind of brought this up by saying that atheists don't believe in God. And so I was wondering, well, how could they have a system of courts and law? But you're saying it's because it was handed down to them. But people who never believed, and you're right, it hasn't really worked out for them, has it?
It hasn't. And there There is a court system in the United States of America, and as we know, it's a Christian, mostly Christian, or based in Judeo-Christian principles. But the laws in America aren't reflective of the Torah completely. There are elements of the Torah within American society and in free society, but mankind has veered. And right from the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, I should say, the pursuit of happiness, man has an ego, and man tries to satisfy his own egotistical needs. So the laws reflect that. They don't completely reflect God's will, although there are basic doctrines that Hashem passed down to the children of Israel that are reflected in the judicial system, the current judicial system, but it's veered.
So are you saying there should be more laws, or are you saying our laws should be changed?
Well, Hashem just answered. He said there needs to be more understanding. There are basic laws that do reflect God's laws. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, the Ten Commandments. But there are many more laws, and there's much more understanding that's required. For example, the pursuit of happiness is not one of God's principles or laws. We achieve happiness by leading a God-driven life and following his laws. And atheists and agnostics and all other thought systems don't necessarily believe in God and God's laws. So we have something called freedom of religion. And while that freedom is important to everyone, there is really one God for everyone. Religion comes from mankind, not from God. God gave one set of laws, which a lot of people don't believe in. There are many religions, but in each religion we could probably draw a line or connect the dots and connect us all into some commonality. For example, we all believe that we shouldn't go around killing each other. We shouldn't rape women, although some societies think that that's okay. But there are basic laws that we all agree to. But in America, we have veered terribly, especially the past decade, where the pursuit of happiness is reigning supreme. That people don't really know and understand what he desires from us. And he's real. And I sound like a broken record every week, like a broken recording, where I repeat that. But he's real. He really does speak to us. And we don't necessarily listen with our souls. And he has certain requirements, and he created a model for us to follow, principles and laws and doctrines like marriage and family and all of those doctrines. And once we start breaking his laws, we see the chaos that we're seeing right now.
Okay, so it's not that we're breaking the government's laws right now, it's God's laws that are being broken.
The terrible chaos that we're seeing right now is that the laws that we're following are coming from mankind. The essence of them come from his desire to bring goodness. Let's talk about real examples, because we're being esoteric now and we're going to be floaty. And I don't want to float. We have real problems right now.
Yes, we do.
Right. So if we extrapolate and go deep into these problems, I can explain further rather than being esoteric. For example, there are a lot of good people in the United States. There are Democrats and there are Republicans. And we could argue all day long that the Democrats and the left-wing liberals are evil. Or we could argue that the conservative right-wing Republicans are evil. Or we could just admit that we're all good people and we want what's best for each other. And start with that principle, that our anger and our resentment towards each other is that we believe that the other side is veering off a cliff and doing it wrong. And so this is where the problem comes in, is that we have a set of laws, for example, immigration, right? We have immigration laws on the books that I don't believe are strictly Democratic or Republican. They were laws that were instituted by the government. And there's checks and balances. So you can't really say these laws are one or the other, right? They're laws. We have the judiciary, we have the Senate, we have the House of Representatives, we have laws. So they're not democratic laws or Republican laws. They're laws of the United States. And in Donald Trump's infinite wisdom, he wants to crack down and have zero tolerance for breaking those laws, right? I'm not talking about the actual laws, whether the laws are just or not right now. I'm talking about there's a law of the land, and God himself said that we need a government to run people, and we need judges, and we need law and order. We need to enforce law. So the president has made an edict. We have a problem with immigration. We have people coming into the country illegally. So we are going to enforce the existing laws with zero tolerance. And so now you see what's going on in the country. And we have fighting and we have acrimony. And what the White House was doing was putting those laws into action, right? So where does God come in? God says you need laws, you need to follow those laws, and you need judges to follow those laws. But now you have mankind involved, right? You have Maxine Waters saying, this isn't right, and I want you to make their lives miserable. And she's breaking the law by calling for protests and to make anybody who agrees with Donald Trump and works for the Republican side of the issue to make their lives miserable. They shouldn't go to the theater anymore. They shouldn't go to restaurants anymore. We should protest and make their lives miserable and break the law. So as you can see, when man gets involved, when their emotions get involved, they don't think in a clear-headed way, and they veer from what God intended. Right? And the laws themselves also are starting to veer from God's laws. I can give you an example. Would you like an example of a law that is smack against his law?
Yes.
Right. In God's model that he handed down to his children to follow was the institution of marriage, which is holy matrimony between a man and a woman. That comes from God. That was the law of the land that was on the books in the United States of America until the past decade. Well, now that law changed, and now there are new forms of marriage that are legal. But we also have a law on the book that says that you have the right to practice freedom of religion. So now we have religious people, Christians and Jews, who don't believe that marriage should be anything other than a man and a woman. But now you have a law that says it's illegal not to recognize other forms of marriage. So now you have two different laws butting heads. You're taking away someone's form of religion, or freedom of religion, I should say, and you've given someone else a freedom that wasn't even given by God himself. So we have laws that are getting mixed up and jumbled, and everybody is clashing and fighting. So when we go away from God's intent, we have chaos, we have confusion, we have more anarchy, not less.
But what about, doesn't it all come down to the golden rule to treat others as you would be treated? So in the case of the homosexual marriage, you would, if you were getting married, you would want people to celebrate you and work with you.
Yes.
Not discriminate against you. So yes. But now you're saying that the freedom of religion clashes with the freedom of marriage.
Well, it's clashing. There are now two sets of laws. You have the right to practice your religion as you see fit, right?
Right.
And now you've given the right for men to marry men and women to marry women, and you are discriminating against them if you don't agree and you don't provide them goods and services. And I saw today an article about a florist who had a client for 10 years, for a decade, who was a gay man who she gave flowers to for 10 years. And then one day he came to her and he wanted her to provide flowers and services to his wedding. And she pulled him aside privately and said, "No, I can't do that. This is against my Christian faith. I'll give you flowers for any other occasion, but I can't do that." Well, she's being sued by the Attorney General, and she runs the risk of going completely bankrupt for following her Christian beliefs that marriage is between a man and a woman. And it is in the Christian religion, the Jewish religion, the Islamic religion, the major monotheistic religions believe that that's the case. So whose right trumps, I hate to use his name, but
I know.
supersedes the other person's rights? When it shouldn't be in the name of, if you're following God's laws and the laws are emanating from what God intended, it shouldn't be a right at all. And I'm not here to talk about the pros and cons for or against homosexual marriage. It is now the law of the land. But you can see when you veer away from God's intent and your laws emanate from man's desires and not God's desires, you have conflict and anarchy.
Well, and at the very least, when you have conflicting laws, which law rules?
Freedom of speech. Yeah. I saw, and I've been following the news, there are now in the LBGT, they added letters Q,
right? RS, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not laughing at it. I'm just saying it used to be LBGT. I think it's LBGTQ. This is what I saw recently online. And they want to be called certain pronouns. And I watched a video of a representative of LBGTQ, and she said that if you don't call her what she wants to be called, she considers it an act of violence. And so I'm going to be prosecuted. And this particular woman that I saw online said that she wants to be called non-binary, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that doesn't have a gender. I don't know what it means. I'm not being funny about it. I just really don't know. It's hard for me to keep up. There are new terminology every single day. And if I'm not privy to the terminology and I use the wrong terminology, I run the risk of prosecution now. So where's my freedom of religion? What if I don't agree with that? I'm not looking to harm someone, but it's like they're making it up on the fly. Every day, there's a new gender, there's a new pronoun. And if I'm not privy to that and I accidentally call someone that looks like a girl a she, I could be sued or something like that. I'm being accused of being violent, an act of violence. It's horrific. So where's my freedom of speech? Am I allowed to think for myself? They're allowed to think for themselves. So this is where the originating doctrine of the United States of pursuit of happiness was a loaded gun. Because first of all, is this really making everybody happy? Let me ask that question. Everybody's fighting. The Democrats and the Republicans and the liberals and the conservatives, we're all fighting. Who's happy right now?
I don't know.
So I have a dear friend who is lesbian, and she asked me about this. And it's no surprise that it's in the Bible that God does not desire homosexuality as a way of life. And she asked me, she said, Lori, doesn't God want me to be happy? And I said, of course he does. Well, doesn't God love me? Of course he loves you. But he has a model and he has a way of life. And he knows ultimately how you will be happiest. Believe it or not. See, people think, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I choose this, when I get that tattoo, when I get that piercing, when I get that car, when I get that, or however they are. Now there's a movement. I saw yesterday a video of a woman that is probably 200 or 300 pounds overweight, and she's part of this movement of fat acceptance. Is she happy? She admitted in the interview that she's severely depressed and on medication now. Maybe it's not from her obesity. Maybe it is from her obesity. But what I'm saying is when we go away from what God intended, God did not intend us to be 200 and 300 pounds overweight, right? He said, protect your health. Guard your health is one of his commandments. And when we go away from his intent, we harm ourselves, and ultimately we don't find true happiness. We may be finding acceptance from others who want to protect our feelings, but are they really helping us find true happiness? And the answer is no.
What does that have to do with morality and justice?
Morality and justice. Okay, well, let's define morality. The morality is choosing between right and wrong, is it not? Or is that ethics? Yes. So what is morality? What is right and wrong on any subject? Just because something isn't a law on the books and you can't get arrested for it doesn't mean it's not a law. Guarding your health is a law from God. You don't guard your health, you fall and you potentially harm yourself and you become unhappy. But let's talk about morality as it relates to justice. So now you have the choice between right and wrong, and let's take fat. People who desire to be fat and fat acceptance, and you may not discriminate against me because I am fat. So now they can bring you up on charges if you discriminate against them because of body image. So they're using the justice system to protect their sense of morality. And morality comes from God, not from people, from man. God gave us the rules to follow. He designed us. He knows what's best for us. He knows why we're here, what he intended for us, and he knows the best way for us to live to enjoy a blessed life.
Okay, isn't there a conflict right there between two of God's laws in your example? So, number one, you're supposed to guard your health, but number two, you're supposed to love one another.
Loving one another doesn't mean enabling somebody to harm themselves. So if I have a small child or a teenage child, and the teenage child has a propensity to overeat, eat a loaf of bread instead of 2 slices, eat a pizza pie, an entire pizza pie instead of 1 slice, and I see my teenage child becoming grossly overweight, I am not loving my child by turning a blind eye and allowing my child to harm himself or herself. So love has nothing to do with not intervening and saying no. In fact, sometimes love, the most powerful form of love that you can give your child or give another person is to stand up and say, no, I will not support you harming yourself.
Is there a simple way to test if particular laws or morals emanate from God?
He says they all come from God. Morality comes from him. He is the original soul who created all the souls in this world.
Okay, but you said that when man gets involved in making laws, a lot of times we go way off the path.
Yes.
Is there a way to figure out when we're going off the path and which laws are consistent with God's laws?
You need to study his laws. You need to understand his intent. And you need to know that man is flawed in the way that they choose themselves an ego and the need to be right or the need to please others. Those needs are not godly. God only gives us laws not for his own self-interest, for our interest only. And so laws, when they don't reflect the greater good of everyone involved, fall short, and they're satisfying ego, someone's ego, either the collective group ego or the self-ego or someone else's ego. Let's talk specifically, let's talk about the immigration problem that we're seeing right now. People are coming to the border and they're crossing the border illegally and they're being put, well, I think they stopped, but I know that there's still protests going on where they were separating children because they were arresting the adults who were breaking the law. And you can't incarcerate children. So it was this whole big powder keg horror situation. But to say that the Republicans or the White House wanted to harm children is not being genuine. No one wants to harm children. But we have a problem, right? So let's talk about ego, right? Ego, where ego gets involved. They're breaking the law, they're cracking down, there's zero tolerance, and now we have the Democratic Party protesting and going into a restaurant and screaming at someone who's trying to eat a meal and calling them expletives. There's a young intern, a Democratic intern, who shouted an expletive to the President of the United States. All of this is coming from ego. This has nothing to do with justice or law. They're crying out and protesting that there's no justice in what the Republicans are doing in this zero tolerance for illegal immigration. But they're breaking the law in their claim that there's no justice. So they're using injustice to fight what they believe is injustice. And we have complete chaos. If people really truly want justice and they want to make a difference, they will sit down and examine the laws and make sure that the laws that they're following and enforcing are just, instead of protesting and being part of the problem and throwing salt in the wound and oil on the fire. We need to go back to the law itself and see and understand, are these laws just? Are they following what God himself would want? Does God want borders? So I heard someone the other day claim that we should be borderless. There should be no borders. We should just have free-flowing walk in and out of countries, and that just can't be. There would be complete lawlessness.
Right.
And that's what we're fighting about. We need to stop fighting. We need to examine the laws that we're enforcing, and we shouldn't be using two wrongs to make it right. Maxine Waters is wrong-headed, and I want to also say that I had a discussion with Hashem about Maxine Waters, and he said she's deeply a good person deep down, but she's choosing evil because she's seeing with her eyes an injustice and not going deeper into the problem and examining the problem and looking for real solutions. So she's an example of good people choosing evil when they're seeing something that they perceive as evil. So it's complete chaos, anarchy. I hope you enjoyed this program of Running on Love with God. I don't know how much light I can shed on this subject right now. We all need to come together and learn what He desires. And when we get closer to what He desired, we'll start to see peacefulness in our society. Thank you for watching, and go to lauriemichelle.net, and there are more videos there, more programs, and there'll be more. And within the next couple of months, you'll get to read my book with God's help. God bless you. This is the work of world peace. May there be world peace in our time. God bless you.